What if the most powerful woman in Britain kept a secret diary documenting her true feelings about the woman who threatened to destroy the monarchy? For over 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II maintained a private journal, writing in it every single night before bed. She recorded her thoughts on world events, family matters, and the people who shaped her reign. And no one dominated those pages more than Princess Diana, the woman who captivated the world but terrified the palace. These diary entries have never been published. They never will be. But based on documented evidence, palace insiders' accounts, and the Queen's own carefully chosen words in official statements, we can piece together what Elizabeth really thought about Diana. This is the untold story of two women who both loved the monarchy, but had radically different visions for its future. One wanted to preserve tradition, the other wanted to burn it down, and their conflict would change the royal family forever. November 20th, 1980. The Queen sits at her desk in Buckingham Palace, fountain pen in hand. "Today I met the girl who will marry Charles," she writes. "Lady Diana Spencer, 19 years old, sweet, nervous, completely overwhelmed. She curtsied properly, kept her eyes down, said all the right things. She seems malleable, that's good. We need someone who will adapt to our ways, not someone who will challenge them. Charles seems fond of her, though I suspect it's more convenience than passion. But passion fades, duty endures. If she can give us airs and stay quiet, she'll do perfectly well." Elizabeth had no idea how wrong she was. The shy teenager who'd blushed her way through tea would become the most famous woman in the world, and the greatest threat the British monarchy had faced since the abdication crisis. But in 1980, none of that was visible yet. Diana was just a girl from an aristocratic family, perfect on paper. Her family had served the crown for generations. She had no scandalous past, no controversial opinions, no hint of the revolutionary she would become. The palace believed they'd found the ideal princess, pretty, pliable, and most importantly, obedient. July 29th, 1981, wedding day. "Watch Charles and Diana married today at St. Paul's Cathedral," Elizabeth writes.
August 2nd, 1997. Diana is in the south of France with Dodi Fayed, Elizabeth writes, the son of Mohammed al-Fayed, that Egyptian who owns Harrods and has been desperate for British citizenship for years. The press is speculating about engagement, about marriage, about Diana converting to Islam. It's a nightmare. If Diana marries a Muslim Egyptian and has his child, William and Harry will have a Muslim stepfather and half-siblings. The implications are staggering, not just for optics, but for the Church of England, for the succession, for everything we represent. I don't know if Diana understands what she's doing, or perhaps she does. Perhaps this is her final act of rebellion, marrying exactly the person we'd most fear. I can't stop her. She's no longer royal. But I can control the narrative if it happens. We'll position it as her choice, her life, separate from us. We'll create distance. We must protect William and Harry from this scandal. They're the future. Diana is the past. But Elizabeth never had to manage that particular crisis, because 29 days later, Diana was dead. August 31st, 1997. The Queen's diary entry for this night would later be described by insiders as the most emotional she ever wrote. Diana is dead, she writes. A car crash in Paris. She was 36 years old. They woke me with the news at 4 a.m. I couldn't process it at first. Diana, dead, gone, impossible. She was so alive, so vibrant, so present in the world. How could she simply cease to exist? Charles has gone to Paris to bring her body home. The boys don't know yet. They're at Balmoral with us. I'll have to tell them their mother is dead. I don't know how. I don't know what to say. What do you say to children whose mother died fleeing photographers who made her life hell? Philip thinks we should stay here at Balmoral. Keep the boys away from London, away from the chaos, away from the press. Give them time to grieve privately. I agree. That's what we'd want. Privacy, dignity, time. But already I see the mood turning. The press is asking why we haven't issued a statement, why the flag at Buckingham Palace isn't at half-mast, why we're in Scotland instead of London.
Elizabeth's fears proved prescient. Throughout the 1980s, as Charles and Diana's marriage deteriorated, Diana increasingly used the media to tell her side of the story. She gave carefully orchestrated interviews. She befriended sympathetic journalists. She timed her appearances to overshadow Charles. And most devastatingly, she won the public relations battle completely. When stories emerged about Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, Diana was positioned as the wronged wife, the victim, the woman betrayed by a cold, uncaring family. And Britain believed her. April 6, 1987. Diana gave a speech today about AIDS, Elizabeth writes. She shook hands with AIDS patients without gloves. The photographs are everywhere. The press is calling her brave, compassionate, groundbreaking, and perhaps she is, but she's also reckless. We don't take political stances. We don't involve ourselves in controversial medical debates. We remain neutral so that we can represent everyone, not just those who agree with us. Diana doesn't understand this. Or worse, she doesn't care. She wants to be Diana the humanitarian, Diana the advocate, Diana the change maker. But that's not her job. Her job is to support Charles, raise the boys, and represent the institution with dignity and discretion. She's failing at all three. But Diana wasn't failing. She was succeeding at something entirely different. She was becoming a global icon who transcended royalty. She was using her platform to challenge stigma, support the marginalized, and show that the royal family could be relevant in the modern world. Elizabeth saw this as betrayal. Diana saw it as evolution. And neither woman could understand the other's perspective. January 17, 1992. Annus horribilis, Elizabeth writes. That's what I'll call it, this horrible year. Andrew and Fergie separating, Anne divorcing Mark, Windsor Castle on fire, and now Charles and Diana. Everyone knows the marriage is over. The tabloids publish their fights, their separate lives, their mutual hatred. It's humiliating. For them, for the family, for the institution. I tried to hold them together. I wrote to both of them explaining that divorce is not an option, that they must find a way to coexist for the sake of the monarchy and their sons. Diana's response was defiant. She said she'd rather be happy than dutiful. She doesn't understand that for us, duty is happiness, or at least it must be. We don't have the luxury of personal fulfillment. We sacrificed that the moment we were born into this family. I did, Philip did, Charles did, but Diana never did. She never accepted that her life wasn't her own. The gulf between Elizabeth and Diana had become unbridgeable. Elizabeth represented old values, duty, sacrifice, emotional restraint, and absolute loyalty to the institution. Diana represented new values, authenticity, emotional expression, personal happiness, and the belief that even princesses deserved love. The British public was torn between them. Traditionalists sided with the Queen, progressives sided with Diana, and the monarchy itself became a battleground for competing visions of what royalty should mean in the modern world. November 20th, 1995. Diana gave that interview tonight, Elizabeth writes. Panorama. 23 million people watched. I watched. I wish I hadn't. She sat there, eyes lined in black, looking vulnerable and wounded, and she destroyed us. She talked about her bulimia, her depression, her suicide attempts. She said there were 3 people in her marriage, meaning Camilla. She questioned whether Charles should be king. She said she wanted to be queen of people's hearts instead. It was brilliant media strategy, and it was an act of war against this family. She's positioned herself as the victim of a cold, uncaring institution, and Britain believes her. The press is calling for Charles to abdicate. They're suggesting William should be king instead. They're questioning whether the monarchy has any place in the 21st century. Diana has done what the Republicans never could. She's made people doubt us, and she did it from inside. The Panorama interview was Diana's nuclear option, and it worked. Public sympathy swung overwhelmingly to her side. Charles was vilified, Camilla was despised, and the Queen was seen as a cold matriarch who prioritized tradition over her daughter-in-law's mental health. Elizabeth was furious, not just at Diana's disloyalty, but at her effectiveness. Diana had weaponized her vulnerability and turned public opinion into a force the palace couldn't control. December 20th, 1995. I've written to Charles and Diana, Elizabeth notes, instructing them to divorce. I cannot force them, legally, but I can make it clear that this is my wish as queen and as mother. The situation has become untenable. They're damaging each other and damaging the institution. A clean break is the only solution. Diana will lose her HRG title. She will no longer be considered part of the royal family officially. She will receive a financial settlement and keep her apartment at Kensington Palace. She can continue her charitable work, but she must understand that she is no longer one of us. Perhaps that's what she wanted all along. Freedom. Well, she'll have it, and we'll have stability. Or so, I hope. But Diana's divorce didn't bring stability. It brought more chaos. Diana, freed from royal constraints, became even more powerful. She continued her humanitarian work. She spoke openly about her struggles. She dated profile men. She challenged landmines and AIDS stigma. She became a global celebrity unbound by protocol. And the press couldn't get enough of her. Every move she made was news. Meanwhile, the royal family looked increasingly stuffy, outdated, and irrelevant by comparison.
The years after Diana's death were difficult for Elizabeth. Public opinion of the monarchy plummeted. Calls for abolition increased. The Queen was seen as out of touch, cold, representative of a dying old guard. Meanwhile, Diana's memory only grew stronger. She was canonized as the people's princess, a martyr to royal cruelty. Books, documentaries, conspiracy theories proliferated, and through it all, Elizabeth remained silent, doing her duty with the same stoic discipline she'd maintained for decades. May 19th, 2011. William married Catherine Middleton today,
Elizabeth writes, "The comparisons to Diana are inevitable. Catherine wore Diana's sapphire engagement ring. Diana's memory was everywhere, even though she's been dead 14 years. But Catherine is different. She's more like me than Diana. She understands protocol. She doesn't seek the spotlight. She supports William rather than overshadowing him. And William has learned from his father's mistakes. He's chosen a partner who fits the institution rather than fighting it. Perhaps Diana's legacy will be not in how she changed the monarchy, but in teaching her sons how to balance tradition with modernity, duty with love. William speaks openly about mental health, something I never could have done. He hugs his children in public. He shows emotion. But he does it all while respecting the institution. He found the balance Diana and I never could, and perhaps that's the real gift she left us. Elizabeth's final years saw a gradual rehabilitation of the monarchy's image. William and Catherine, and later Harry and Meghan before their exit, represented a more accessible, emotionally open royal family. They spoke Diana's language of compassion and connection, while maintaining enough of Elizabeth's discipline and duty to keep the institution stable. It was the synthesis of two opposing visions, and it worked, at least for a time. September 8, 2022. Queen Elizabeth II dies at Balmoral Castle at age 96 after 70 years on the throne. Among her personal effects is her private diary, decades worth of handwritten pages documenting her reign. The volumes are sealed and will remain so for years, perhaps forever. But those close to Elizabeth say she wrote about Diana until the very end, trying to understand the woman who loved the monarchy enough to fight for its future, even if that meant destroying its past. Diana and Elizabeth never reconciled. They couldn't. They were too different, too committed to opposing visions, too unwilling to compromise. But in death, perhaps they reached an understanding. Elizabeth spent 70 years preserving the monarchy through unwavering duty and self-sacrifice. Diana spent 17 years trying to humanize it through compassion and authenticity. Together, they created the template for the modern royal family. William, who does his duty with his grandmother's discipline, but speaks about his struggles with his mother's honesty. A balance, a compromise. The synthesis of two women who could never agree, but who both, in their own way, loved the institution they served. The Queen's diary will never be published. We'll never read Elizabeth's most private thoughts about Diana in her own words, but we don't need to. We watched their conflict play out in public for 17 years. We saw Elizabeth's restraint in Diana's rebellion. We witnessed duty versus authenticity, tradition versus change. And we saw that both women were right. The monarchy needed Elizabeth's stability to survive, but it needed Diana's humanity to remain relevant. Together, whether they knew it or not, they saved the institution they both loved, one by preserving it, the other by transforming it. And their legacy lives on, in the princes who learned from both, who carry Elizabeth's sense of duty and Diana's capacity for love, who understand that being royal means being both symbol and human being. On quiet nights at Windsor Castle, in rooms where Elizabeth once wrote by lamplight, the monarchy continues, changed by Diana, steadied by Elizabeth, forever shaped by two remarkable women who loved the crown so much they nearly destroyed it fighting for its future. And perhaps that's exactly what it needed, to be challenged, to be tested, to prove that it could adapt without losing itself entirely. The Queen's secret diary holds the truth of that transformation, but even without reading it, we know the ending. The monarchy survived, and both women, despite their conflict, despite their incompatibility, despite never finding common ground, gave everything to make sure it did. What do you think? Was Queen Elizabeth right to prioritize duty and tradition over Diana's happiness? Or was Diana right to demand that the monarchy modernize and show more humanity? Could they have found a compromise, or were they destined to clash? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this video gave you a new perspective on the complex relationship between these two extraordinary women, hit that like button and share it with anyone who thinks they understand the Diana story. Subscribe to Crown Conspiracies for more investigations into the royal secrets they never wanted you to know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next royal mystery.